Hey there, welcome to the How I Got Hired podcast. I'm your host, Sonal Bahl, former HR director and founder of Supercharge. And I have had an insane corporate career that started out in India, then moved to South America, and then to Europe, often working only in Spanish or French, which I had to learn there from scratch. Now, why do I call my career insane? Because while I've experienced complete highs, like working across geographies and industries while navigating challenges like needing visa sponsorships, zero network locally during recessions, and often while being a new mom to one of my two kids, I have seen career heartbreak and multiple layoffs as well. As a career strategist, I strongly believe that a fulfilling career is a birthright and not a privilege for the lucky few who have access to prestigious education, capital, and networks. And now I am on a mission to democratize access to high-value career advice by designing affordable digital courses with my YouTube channel and this podcast right here, where we learn together from ordinary people like you and me and how they created extraordinary career success. I hope this episode reminds you that if they could do it, you can do it too. Now, get ready to get supercharged. Let's go. Hey, welcome back. Welcome back. So glad you decided to join us today. My guest today is John Tarnoff, and he is coming to us all the way from Los Angeles, California. And if you're anything like me, you think LA and you think Hollywood. So as a matter of fact, the reason I brought that up is because John started his career in the movies. Yes. So he's done a variety of roles, not necessarily on screen, but all of the magic that happens off screen. So right from being a talent agent to working in film production. And if you're wondering, which films are these? I'm going to name drop a couple of these right now. I saw on his bio, Power of One, Morgan Freeman was in there. Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure with Keanu Reeves, something that I grew up with, so silly, made me laugh. That's exactly what movies are all about. And then he moved to DreamWorks Animation. We all know DreamWorks. And developed top talent over there that was working on films like Kung Fu Panda and How to Train Your Dragon. So I hope you're sitting up and I hope I've got your attention. So this is a very, very interesting person to talk to. Now, what has John been up to since 2012? He has worked as a career coach. And I think that although all of these reasons are super impressive to bring John to the show, because as you know, dear listener, I'm so picky about the people I invite to the show. Another reason I wanted to bring John on is because he has opinions. Just like I do, and is not afraid to share his opinions and sometimes go against the grain if need be. John's career spans almost 50 years, 50 years, and we have so much to learn from him. So excited for this conversation. We're going to learn so much from you, John. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much, Sonal. It's so great to be here. Thanks for that great intro.
You're most welcome, John. Let's get right into it because you have so much to teach us in the decades that you have been working since the early 70s. And I have a greedy 3-part question here. So your early career, your mid-career, and the later career, just before you left corporate and moved to the coaching side, right? So in this period of time, let's start with the early career, because my question is going to be about the roles that made a huge indelible impression on you and how you got hired into those roles, because that's the name of the show, How I Got Hired. But I want to start with the first part of your career where, like I said, you were in the movies, right? And this is an industry. Hollywood, I think any movie industry is notorious for handing out rejections like, hot potatoes, like
candy.
You hear a no.
Candy.
Yeah. It's like it's going out of style. You just keep hearing no. And I don't know how that builds that resilience muscle, which I'm sure you learned a lot. But talk to us about during this period of time.
Right.
What was that role that made all the difference and how did you get hired there?
Okay. So first of all, I just want to just pick up on this notion of what we're going to talk about today, early career, mid-career, late career, because there are some key differentiators that I think people who are experienced will go, oh, yeah, that describes it. People who are at the younger end of the spectrum will be wondering about. And that is that in the early career, what I want to talk about is how you get a job. In the mid-career, I want to talk about how you pivot in your career, how you transition. And then in the late career, kind of if I'm any example, and I think this is really, I'm seeing this more and more with my clients, it's about how you hire yourself in late career. So we'll go back to the beginning, or not quite the beginning, and really talk about this question of resilience, because as you know, from looking at my TEDx talk, I dine out on the idea, and back to being controversial and saying things that make people uncomfortable, I dine out on the fact that in my career in entertainment, I was fired 39% of the time. And I came up with that number in the TEDx talk kind of as a joke, and people laughed, but there was a nervous laughter because, I mean, who talks about this, right? Who talks about getting fired as if it's a metric or something to be proud of?
As if it's a badge of honor. Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But I mean, this is 2012. We're coming out of the recession. I'm talking about how people later in their careers, particularly boomers, but now we're talking about Gen X, are at an inflection point. And at that time, a lot of people were having trouble recovering from the recession. And it was a big wake-up call for a lot of people who had lost a lot of their house value, their 401k, their retirement savings were vastly reduced. So the question that I was posing was, well, how do we recover from this, right? Particularly with ageism, the fact that people are living longer, people don't want to retire, people can't afford to retire. I mean, parenthetically, if you think that you've saved enough for retirement and you're in your 50s and you think you're going to retire at 60 or 62, you've got a pretty good chance of living through your 80s, maybe even into your 90s. Can you afford 30 years of retirement based on what you've saved today? I would say that most people will say no. They've kind of examined the books. They'll say, no, I need to keep working. And by the way, working in a work that you love or where you feel useful keeps you more engaged, more vital, more mentally acute, more engaged with people. It's a kind of a growth mindset approach.
And more young
life
as well, right?
Well, I don't want to use the word young because I don't want to get into the age thing, because what's young, what's old, right? Yeah. Oh, people say, oh, you look young for your age. It's like,
no, you're right. You're right. That is horrible for your age, and especially when they do that with women, the gendered part. Let me rephrase that. Fresh keeps you fresh.
Yes. Right. Fresh, vital, engaged, aware, curious, right? All of these great qualities that we associate with youth, but that don't have to be exclusively the purview of youth, right? We want to keep those qualities going throughout our lives, right?
Yeah.
So off the soapbox for a second. So, back to this question of career stages, what I've kind of come to the conclusion about in getting hired, going into career and through that early stage applies to everyone and applies to me and my clients today as it did to me back in the day, which is I never used my resume to get a job. And in a volatile, people-oriented, fast-moving business culture like entertainment, it's all about relationships, right? No one gets a job because they submit a resume to an open position. It's all because of networking. It's all because someone calls and gets you in. So that's the number one thing that I learned early on in this volatile business. And then I would say the other thing is to be really proactive about what you want to do, what you can do, and how to articulate it and speak about it. And to not be afraid to engage with the position, the hiring manager, the recruiter, and have a negotiation to determine whether you are the right fit.
Yeah.
You don't want to, even at a young age, you don't want to go in to a job opportunity as a supplicant. Please hire me for this job. I'll be a good boy or girl. No, you want to go in providing value. So I'll tell you a story about something that happened to me, which kind of was a bit of a surprise, but it was something I did out of necessity. And it turned into a really good example of this. I was working for a company that had some, as a production executive, supervising the development and the production of feature films. And this is the 1980s. The head of the company had raised a lot of money. He had set up offices overseas. There was a company in Australia that he had started. He had started building a studio in Australia. Things were not going well. The films that we were producing were not successful at the box office. It was slowly going downhill. So one day, the guy who was running the office in Australia called me up and he said, "Look, you guys are going out of business. You've got 6 months." He said, "I want to hire you to come work for me at the Australian affiliate. And what we're going to do is we're going to get investors. We're going to buy the company away from the US company. We're going to start our own thing. And I want you to run the Los Angeles office." I said, "Great." So we did all of that. And sure enough, we found an investor. The investor came in, they bought the company, but they weren't so sold on the idea of having a Los Angeles office. So one of their associates, one of the colleagues of the CEO, was in Los Angeles, and he came to see me to kind of check out the office and what we were doing. I showed him the films we were working on, blah, blah, blah. He says to me, "Look, they're not into this idea of having the office here." He said, "Nothing against you. You're a perfectly good guy, but we're going to shut it down." And I thought, oh, great. I got to go out and look for a job again. And then I had an idea. I said to him, "Would you be open to reading a proposal about the business and about what the value of this office is and taking it back to Australia?" And he said, "Sure." He said, "Can you get it to me tomorrow morning?" I said, "Yeah." So I went home. I worked most of the night on this proposal. And this is, of course, I'm on a real typewriter, right? There's no word processors. So I come back in, give him this 5-10 page report, and he looks through, says, "Interesting." And he goes away, and I wait. And I wait for a day, nothing. Second day, he calls, he says, "We like it." He says, "As a matter of fact, we like it so much that we're going to keep the office open. I'm going to come in and run it. You're going to be the executive VP. I'm going to run the business side and the distribution side. You're going to run the production side. And we're going to make movies in Australia. We're going to blah, blah, blah." So I saved that job and I built myself a runway for the next 5 years and upgraded my role and my profile because I took the initiative to not take no for an answer.
Yes. And I like this answer because not just the initiative and being proactive, but you're exactly, exemplifying what you talked about earlier, which people will say, "Yeah, but it's such a risky move." I would say it's risky not to do it.
I agree. You have nothing to lose because the worst case is they're letting you go.
No,
right?
Literally you have nothing to lose except a couple of hours of sleep at night.
Right.
And that bought you 5 years of runway. So
exactly.
Brilliant. I love this. So I want to just recap this for the listener because John's going to give us these examples of early, mid-career and later career. And it doesn't matter whether we are talking about hiring in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s and beyond, because at the end of the day, people are people, right? We said, John and I were chatting backstage. There's a very famous expression in French. The more things change, the more they remain the same, right? We don't tend to go that far from the pendulum. So this is a great example. I'm also excited to hear about the mid-career, and I'm especially excited to hear about later career at 50 plus, because I know you have a LinkedIn learning course on how to get hired at 50. And in certain cultures, unfortunately, there is ageism that exists, and you're seen as less desirable, which is obviously, we all know, complete nonsense. But how do we address that bias, etc.? So before we get there, I'm getting ahead of myself. Talk to us about the next role after you've got 15, 20 years in your belt that was a difference maker.
So the mid-career is about the pivot. And I see this developmentally from a psychological point of view all over the place. After you get to a certain point, you've kind of climbed the mountain, right? Personally, professionally, you've gotten promoted, you've got some achievements under your belt, you've got some experience, you've made some mistakes, and you have kind of something to sell at this point. But developmentally, in midlife, you're starting to think, well, what's it all about? And you're starting to kind of question now, from this vantage point, what is your purpose? What is the meaning of life and career? What am I doing?
Can you tell me when you had that, John? Because I think a lot of people can relate with what you're saying. Can you tell us at what point you had these thoughts, like your age?
It really was 50. It was plus or minus 50. For me, it kind of coincided with this occurrence professionally around the loss of my startup. Yes. So I had kind of taken a sabbatical from entertainment in the 90s when multimedia came in and CD-ROM games were a thing. And I thought, wow, what another great way to tell stories. And I was a bit of a tech nerd and had been working with computers since the mid 80s. And I thought, oh, this will be fun. This will be another interesting opportunity. And one thing led to another. I met a guy. We started a company together. We built a technology and raised money in the bubble in the mid to late 90s. And we had this company going. We had a couple of big contracts. This was a customer service oriented company using artificial intelligence, which was very new. I mean,
novel at the time. Yes.
This was very, very early and very rudimentary from what we have today.
Sure.
Nonetheless, we were making traction. And then in the spring of 2001, the market crashed and everything crashed with it, including our company. And all of the investors that we had raising additional money for us went away, and the clients went away. And within about 6 months to a year, and there were all sorts of crazy things going on.
No, but there was also 9/11 a few months later.
And then there was 9/11.
That didn't help.
There was 9/11, right? So it was just a crazy time. And I realized that we were going to have to shut this thing down. And I didn't know what I wanted to do. And I felt like I had not so much turned my back on entertainment, but I was no longer as interested in those jobs, playing the politics. And I hadn't burned bridges, but I really hadn't.
But you moved on.
Exactly. I had really kind of moved on, and I didn't know what to do. And I thought, okay, well, what are my options? I thought, I've got to do something. I have to do a pattern interrupt here, right? I can't. What's the Einstein line about? You can't solve a problem at the same level at which it was created. So I thought, I got to do something. And it occurred to me that I should go back to school. And I knew of this program in spiritual psychology, small graduate institution in Santa Monica. A number of people I knew had been through the program, not to become psychologists, but because it was a great break for them to learn more about themselves, learn more about how to engage with other people, how to solve problems. And I thought this would be a great opportunity for me to just get clear and learn about myself. But I was going to have to raise the money to do it. So I had to take another mortgage on the house. I knew I had about a 9-month ramp to figure this out. And somewhere along the line, get another job. And in October of 2002, when I started this, if you had told me 9 months from now, you're going to be sitting at an office at DreamWorks Animation, making Hollywood money again, doing this amazing job that you never have done before, working with great people, I would have said you were smoking something. Because
never
it just
say never. Never say never.
Exactly. It seems so unbelievable.
Yeah.
But what I did was I started networking in a different way. And I can only attribute this to the fact that because I had started the program and was learning new things and having new subjects to talk about and discovering new stuff and kind of on this growth spurt, as it were, intellectually, I started coming across differently. I didn't come across like, oh, here's a guy whose startup just failed. He needs a job. I was coming across as someone who's kind of engaged with ideas and asking questions and interested in what was going on. It was new, that was technological, about transitions, about whatever. And I started having meetings. And one of those meetings was with a friend of mine who was working at DreamWorks. And he said, wow, it sounds like, you've been doing some interesting stuff. And it sounds like your company was interesting. So what would you ever think about joining us at DreamWorks? I said, are you kidding? That would be fantastic. I said, is there a job? He said, no, we're not looking for anybody right now. I thought, oh, great. He said, but let me start introducing you to some of my colleagues over there. And let's start getting some conversations going. Well, sure enough, it took 6 months of conversations, but I started to get traction through that process. And the lesson here for me, for the purposes of our call, is that in mid-career, and to a large extent at all stages in your career, you get jobs through conversations.
Yeah.
Not through applications.
Yeah.
So you want to get yourself into as many conversations as possible where you can get to know people, they can get to know you, and magic happens.
Yes.
And magic happened for me at DreamWorks.
Yes. Yes.
And at a certain point, they realized that I was a valuable piece of talent that they needed to create a role for. Because where they were at that time just turned out to map to a number of skills that I happen to have regarding technology adoption, movie production, team management and development.
Yeah.
And that brought me in. And I was there for over 6 years in this unique role.
Yeah.
That really was the best job that I
love
had
this story so much.
in the
There's so many lessons in here. I do agree with you about applications versus conversations. I'm not always sure it's either or. Sometimes it helps.
Oh, I agree.
But the later you are in your career, it is definitely the conversations that trump applications because of the relationships. And a lot of those positions are not even advertised. Classic example, Exhibit A is that role, and they created an exception for you. People don't realize when people fall in love, they tend to help you. They fall in love with you. They're like, oh, I'm an interesting guy. However, the reason it doesn't work with a lot of people is because it takes time. And you said 6 years, 6 months.
6 months.
I had a guy on my show who talked about Adobe, and it was his dream company. It took him 3 years to break into it. And you need patience. And when it happened, it was so organic. And people said, lucky overnight success. And they're like, they don't see all the schmoozing and all the conversations I had to do, but it's hard work. So I love this. I love this idea that you said. I never thought of it in this way. Although I have a couple of videos on my YouTube channel about if you're not sure what to do, an MBA is a good idea. But the pattern interrupt, I like that you said pattern interrupt, a master's program, MBA, and in this case, a master's in spiritual psychology. I mean, I love that. That sounds so California right now. Guilty. This sounds so juicy. And
let me just put a little bit of a specification on that program, because the spiritual psychology aspect of it is about taking personal responsibility for everything that goes on in your life, right?
So that's, in fact, perfect, because I had a follow-up question for you here. I know this was a while ago, but for someone who's listening and maybe tiny bit curious about spiritual psychology, is there one particular thing that you still remember today in terms of the lessons learned? A quick one?
I use this every day. I use this every day in my coaching program.
Tell us which one.
And it starts with this question of personal responsibility. And as time goes on in our careers, we accumulate baggage, and it's normal. You go through life, you get dinged, right? You get beaten up a little bit, and whether it's getting fired, whether it's making a bad decision, whether it's having a toxic boss, whether you have workplace relationships that don't go well, whether you make a mistake and find yourself in a job that's the wrong job for you, there is no straight line. And we are kind of taught to be ashamed of ourselves if there is no straight line. What's wrong with you? Why, my mother used to say, why can't you hold a job in that business? You're always changing jobs. Why can't you hold a job? Because in an earlier era, in the industrial era, the idea was you were a cog in the machine. You got hired at 20. You worked for 40
years. And you were a lifer.
Yeah, you were a lifer, and then they took care of you. But of course, that's all gone. So the idea of spiritual psychology really is to identify the issue inside yourself first that is being triggered by the external stimulus or irritation, and look for the opportunity to renegotiate it on the inside as a way of engaging more proactively and successfully on the outside. And I remember the person who was my supervisor at DreamWorks, who was the COO, and I'll talk about her in another instance in a second. In one meeting, she said to me, you seem to have no ego because you're so kind of cooperative and engaging. I said, well, I wouldn't say I'm cooperative. And she would say, well, yeah, I guess you're not necessarily cooperative. I said, but those questions of ego seem kind of irrelevant to me.
For me, that's the ultimate compliment. If someone says you appear like you have no ego, because I do think the ego can be the enemy at times.
Well, the ego can be the enemy, absolutely. But that I think goes to my training, my psychology training, because I'll tell you an interesting idea, an interesting incident. I haven't thought about this in a while. There was a period of time when I was, I think early on in the DreamWorks job, where I had an opportunity to move back into production. And I had said to them going in, I don't want to do production anymore. I want to do people stuff. And there was this opportunity. It was kind of like this shiny carrot that was kind of dangled at me to go and produce this film. And so I started kind of veering towards that. And all of a sudden I noticed that things were different. I would walk down the hall and people weren't looking at me directly. They weren't talking to me. That's the way it felt. And I wasn't feeling balanced around this decision. And the minute I thought, okay, I'm letting this go, I'm going to pull my, as we say in America, you throw your hat in the ring, you kind of declare your candidacy. I pulled my hat back out of the ring. I said, I'm not interested in this position anymore. And everything changed back again. And it was like, oh, hi, how are you? It was like, all of a sudden the energy came back. And I thought, oh, that's interesting. That's the universe.
So many signals telling you, dude, don't do it.
Yep. That's the universe telling me I'm on the right track here. I need to follow this track. So this is another lesson for me, for the people that I work with, for all of us, about watch those signals, right?
Oh, yeah.
Watch those signals and don't be in denial about it, right? Don't be afraid to kind of confront the reality of what you see. Anyway, some lessons from spiritual psychology.
I love that. And also, I wasn't planning to ask you this, John, but this is so interesting because you worked with people, you identified them, you developed them, you retained them. Some of the top people that went on to make um, legendary stuff that my kids have grown up with and love.
Yeah.
Kung Fu Panda, How
Yeah.
to Train Your Dragon.
Oh yeah,
What did you?
I see their credits. I watch animated movies and I see their credits, and they're now producing and directing these movies. I'm going, oh, I hired them out of school. You know?
Yeah, they were babies. So
Yeah.
talk to us about how do you identify who's got the it factor?
Well, the first thing that occurs to me is that these are people who never say no, whether it is their willingness to take on an assignment, go the extra mile, not allow their boundaries to be overrun. These are some of the qualities I think that
100%.
make a leader, because at the end of the day, these are leadership qualities. And I think the people who are successful, even if they are not in quote unquote leadership roles, they're exercising leadership.
That's great. I have so many videos on my YouTube channel where I talk about this stuff. And I said, this is hard to teach. It's easier to discern the hard technical skills. But if you had everyone with the same level of technical skills, animation and motion graphics and all of that stuff being equal, the attitude, right, is harder to train. You either kind of see it, you got it, or you don't. So This is so confirming. This is so affirming. So thank you so much. I appreciate this. And now talk to us about getting hired in your 50s and beyond, because you've been through this journey.
Right.
And you've seen this with your clients. And there can be, I hate to say this, but there can be a little bit of a victim mindset.
Absolutely.
It's so bitter. It does feel like you're, removed from contention because of literally a factor that you cannot change, which is on your passport and your birth certificate. And that victimhood can be very addictive as well. I hear things like, I'm in my 50s, I'm a white man, Sonal. It's
yes.
And I'm like, it's so hard to win with that attitude.
Right.
So help us with that. And help us with that, but also tell us from your own example.
Sure.
I don't want to say how do you beat ageism, but in the sense that how do you play the game?
Yeah. We got a lot to unpack here.
Yes.
And I just had this conversation yesterday with a prospective client who he didn't want to say it in the call, but I said to him, you're experiencing the old white guy syndrome. He's getting right to the final interviews and they're not hiring him.
Yeah.
And he's not being given the feedback directly, but he is in some cases able to navigate around to find out who got the job.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about the third element and this idea of firing yourself. And a couple of things about that. One is that I did fire myself at DreamWorks, which is crazy. But I had gotten to the point, and this is 2010, where the programs that I had started were in place, they were running. And I went to the COO one day and I said, look, this is a crazy meeting, but here's my question. Is there anything left for me to do around here? And she turned bright red. And she said, I'm going to answer the question. She said, but first of all, I want you to know, we love you. You've done an amazing job. And, no one else could have done it the way. And you were the perfect person for us at this time. She said, but to answer your question, probably not.
Yeah. Wow. What courage, John. What courage to ask the question, because again, your instincts were telling you, dude, this is a well-oiled machine. You've done a good job and it can run without you.
I was starting to feel like I was eating myself up. And I felt like I was smiling less. Right? I don't know if that was true or not.
I know what you mean. There are times we can even soul crushing can also be a description sometimes.
Yeah. The job had been so good. It'd been so much fun. There's so much energy. The people I worked with were great. I had this fantastic team. And I think when you have that kind of a good experience, when it starts to go south, it's such a contrast that, I mean, in my case, I thought, I got to do something about this. And I really wanted to stay there. I didn't want to fire myself. I would have been happy to stay there. And Anne, the COO, said, look, you know everyone around here. She said, go talk to everyone and see, what we're doing, all the initiatives are going on. See if there's something that you feel like you can plug yourself into. And the only thing that I could have done was, because we were doing overseas ventures in India and China, and I thought, well, I could move to India or China, but I wasn't going to do that. I was going to, pull my kid out of high school and, go to India or China. So I realized that there wasn't anything there. And I kept trying to come up with new ideas, and I wanted to do more in the education space, and it just wasn't the time. The company was going in a different direction. So we negotiated a very civilized exit, and they unusual for Hollywood. There's a lot of bad endings in Hollywood.
Yeah, but did you get this, John, from family or friends? Like, dude, what did you do? Like, why did you, like, this wasn't broken? Like, why did you have to go in and you know what I mean? Like,
right, sure. I did get that from some people, but I explained. I said, it's just I kind of came to the end of the rope here, and I kind of have done what I was called to do. The mission was done. And in a sense, that's a lot of how this business works. When you go on a movie, you do the project, right? You're all about the project. And when the project's done, the project's done, right? And you go off and you do a new project. So in that sense, it was similar to the production cycle. But at age 60 or so, I thought, well, I'm getting out of here, but I don't want to get another job. I do not want to go work for another company. I am at the stage in my life, and this kind of goes to the third career stage, where I'm not going to be a good employee. I have too many ideas. It's not that I'm set in my ways. It's that I'm going to want to do it kind of my way, and I'm not going to just lie down and take orders. So either I'm running a show or I'm doing my own thing. And I thought, well, I've never really done my own thing. And I've never really done my own thing in this area, because I was very fired up about education and training and development and all of the stuff that led to my career coaching practice. I wasn't sure that that's what I was going to do at that time, but this was the direction that I wanted to go in. And I had built up this grounding at DreamWorks in education, and wound up actually right out of DreamWorks being called by one of the universities that we were working with to hire kids into entry-level programs. And they said, well, we have a new program in LA. We'd like you to come in and help us run that. And I did that for 10 years.
They found you? They found you out of the blue?
Well, no, they knew me. I'd been working with them. So again, it was relationships, right?
Yeah. They remembered you.
I had built relationships with 40 different universities over the years that I'd been at DreamWorks doing these entry-level hiring programs. So they came to me and they said, hey, we see you're leaving. Do you want to talk to us about coming to work with us in this program? And it was a halftime.
How did they know? Sorry, how did they know you were leaving? Because LinkedIn and the feed, it wasn't the same as it is today. So you did something to stay.
Well, I announced it. I said, I'm leaving. I'm leaving to go off and do my own consulting practice.
You sent like an email. I don't think I sent a blanket announcement like a birth announcement or something, but personalized it.
But I let people know.
Good.
Right. It was really important that it be my decision. Right. Even though it was kind of half my decision, half their decision. We just came to a parting of the ways. It was different. But they were very generous about it. And, I had my final meeting with Jeffrey Katzenberg, who was the CEO, legendary guy. And he said, so what can I do for you? You know, is there something I can do for you on your way out? I said, yeah, you can write me a recommendation. And he said, sure, of course. So he said, why don't you write the first draft?
Perfect.
So, right. And that's just like to insert that. If you walk out with your head high, even if they fire you, right? You want to walk out with your head high because you don't want to burn the bridge.
Yes.
You want to turn that to your advantage.
Yes.
So stop, and this is the ego thing again, stop thinking about what a victim you are and why you got fired and someone else didn't get fired and how unfair it is and how the world is terrible. And think, okay, how can I turn this into an advantage? How can I do the best with this situation?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And to the question of ageism now, and why ageism, and what do we do about ageism? Well, we're not going to get anywhere by complaining about it. We have to circumvent it. And I think this goes to picking up from that 50-year-old mid-career question about meaning and purpose. And now in mid to late career, really putting that into the forefront. Because if you can articulate the value that you deliver, not the roles that you perform or the tasks that you do, but the real value that you deliver, the product, really, the outcome, the transformation that you deliver through your work. And you can articulate this in a way that really establishes that value, then people don't care how old you are. They want that value. And you have to sell it, you have to position it for the customer, for the client, for the employer, right? It's not about, well, here's what I do, here's what I can do, here's what I deliver for you, I can do anything. It's like, no, here's what you need, right? And what if we could create this result for you, right? Talk about that strategy. Don't give away your secret sauce, but talk about that strategy, talk about that outcome. Create this in their imagination, this vision of what it would be like if you were working for them. And no matter what you do, whether you are going for a full-time position or a consultancy or a part-time position, always take the attitude of a consultant delivering value to a client. Never think of yourself as an employee looking for direction from a supervisor. It's a key mindset difference.
Yes, very much. Very much. I talk about that as well. And also the consultant / CEO of your career, as opposed to an order taker. We're more than that. Yeah. We're all more than that. That's right. I love this. And I also, one thing I want to credit you for, and we talked about this offline. It was refreshing to see your LinkedIn profile, John, because first of all, I think everybody should read the About section. It's written so well. It takes me, it's like you holding our hand and you're taking us down a journey through, to the story. And you do what a lot of gurus, I'm going to put this in air quote, career gurus, especially in the US, they advise us not to do. And that is, you have mentioned your graduation year.
Yes.
I love it. I have mentioned it as well. And many people say, do not, and ageism, bias, but you're like, I don't care. I'm going to do it because eventually people are going to find out who cares.
Exactly.
Now, in that vein, I want to stay here for a minute and appeal to the opinionated John, which we have all started to enjoy a lot. Which is honestly a breath of fresh air. I want to highlight a post that you published late last year, and I highly recommend to our listener to check it out. It's in John's featured section. It's very hard to miss it. And in this post, you talked about the green open to work banner. You took a lot of heat on that post, John. Oh my gosh, the comment section is so brutal. And I want to know, since you have published this post, what is your latest position on the open to work banner? Sometimes when we publish something, like Adam Grant says, think again. We're like, we're allowed to slightly, change our mind or adapt our position on the situation. And the part two is, I also want to know about the comment section, because until and unless the listener doesn't read them, I mean, you were so much under attack. And some of the attacks were personal. Like, it was hard to read. And you have not only displayed them, not only have you not blocked those people, but it's in your featured section. So talk about like being battered and bruised.
Yeah.
So this is a two-parter, your position on the open to work green banner and, life in the comment section, trolls.
So for me, just the position on the green banner hasn't really changed that much. The green banner is kind of the lazy job seeker's way of pursuing a job. If you think that putting that open to work badge on your profile picture is going to get you a job, and you can just kind of sit back and pray that people will notice and people will see you're a good guy, good gal, you want to be hired, please hire me, I'm open to work, then I think you'd need to work harder. And first of all, everyone on LinkedIn, 100% of people who are on LinkedIn are open to work. It's why we're on LinkedIn.
By default, yes.
Right? So that's a kind of a coy little way that we can kind of raise our little hand and go, please hire me. That bugs me, right? Because I think it's a very brutal hiring marketplace out there. People are getting fired. People are working in toxic workplaces. We're still talking about return to work and hybrid work. And, what is it now that at one of the FANG companies, whether I don't know if it's Microsoft, that if you are out of the office more than 1 day or 2 days a week, you are ineligible for promotion.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No,
right. So we're seeing all sorts of bias and crazy behavior going on from management still. And you need to be more proactive about it. And that was my message, is it's just not going to serve you. If you think that this is going to do it and you're going to just be waiting for the email to hit your inbox, it's not going to happen.
No, I understand. That's a fair point.
And that was my point.
Yeah. Right? If it's done, first of all, I don't think people who gave such hate in the comments, I don't think they actually read.
They didn't read the blog post, right?
They didn't read the article,
right? Because the blog post is really much more about,
the nuance.
Don't stop here. Yeah. Here's what you do, right?
No,
here's 100%. How to be more proactive about it.
The lazy part, I've understood. If that is all you do and you pray, it's not enough. That's completely fair.
And I just wrote another post the other day, last week, about this feature, which I'm seeing, which is a good feature, which is now this kind of green post, which says, I'm looking for, I forget what the default wording is, but, help someone get their job, right? And it basically is a networking style post, a default LinkedIn post, which says, please refer me to, if you hear of anything, I'm interested in a job. And then it says, so-and-so is interested in this, this, and this. And it's similar. My response to that is similar to the open to work badge, because you can't go out with the default wording that LinkedIn gives you. You have to amplify that and be specific about the work you're looking for, the kinds of companies you want to work at.
100%. Right? And I wouldn't count on the AI in the message section. Oh my God, they'll be like, hey, oh, John, it's been some time. How are you doing? Those templates that AI suggests, they're terrible. So we have to apply our own sort of initiative and intelligence. So that's a very good point. Doing that alone is not enough, but doing that in conjunction with something else, we need a strategy, right?
Right.
First of all. Second of all, the people who had a big problem with your post, they say things like, I proactively look for people who have the open to work banner because they mean that they're immediately available, they're hungry. I totally get that. I get that. And I love that. I love that they are being open about it.
Right. Well, they are few and far between. They are few and far between.
Exactly. What they don't understand, all the recruiters that the rest of us, when we talk to them, I talk to them, you talk to them, and they say, I'm looking for people who are already employed.
You beat me to it. Now,
what about them?
Now, the recruiters may understand that someone's value is not dependent upon whether they are currently employed. An employer, however, wants the person who is employed. The employer does not want to deal with the question of why did they get let go from their prior position, blah, 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 because that employer, that hiring manager, supervisor is going to say, where did you hire that person from? Where were they last?
And that is a problem. No, that is a problem.
And the hiring manager says, well, they were let go from, you hired someone who was unemployed?
Exactly. Now, the thing is, ultimately, there is a problem. This is the problem. This is the way of thinking, which is problematic. That is the source, right? That is the source. So we're beating up the wrong sort of beast here. Right. And secondly, they're the guys who pay the bill, right? They're the ones who pay the executive recruiters, et cetera.
Exactly.
So is it fair? No, of course not. But I'm a pragmatist, and I think you are as well. It's not about what's fair. It's not about doing the right thing. A lot of those people talk about, either they talk about doing the right thing because it's a cruel market, or they talk about this is how I do it, that virtue sort of signaling. Both are true. The third point is there is a big majority of people who are not actively logged on to LinkedIn 14 hours a day and make these kind of messages. Those are people in their own bubbles who are not living on LinkedIn, who want someone who already works, and they want to.
I had plenty of recruiters reach out to me on that post and say, you're right.
But they will not say, that's the whole point. I have a problem. They will not say it publicly.
Oh, but no, if you look on that thread, and I don't want to kind of get back into it, it was so long ago, but there are plenty of people on that thread who were positive about it and said,
no, I get that, but a lot of them will not say it publicly, but they don't want to get attacked. They don't want to get attacked. You took it for the team.
Yeah.
So
I
totally get that.
I'll tell you, and when I first saw the
reaction,
the flaming going on, I felt really dejected, and because I'm a people pleaser. I want, I talk about.
I think you wouldn't be human if you didn't get dejected.
Right. I wanted to be a bit of a scold on a certain level. Yeah, I wanted to kind of encourage people to do better. That was the idea, and that's what gets me riled up. But then I thought, after about an hour of feeling like, oh shit, I'm gonna really, people don't like me and whatever. I'm in trouble now. I thought, no, this is good. This is good. I've generated some controversy. I really don't care about these people. They are defensive because they've got something that's going on with them. Spiritual psychology again, right?
Yeah.
This is their problem, not my problem.
And it's interesting because they said the opposite. They said, but this guy, why is he saying this? Because he's peddling, career services and resumes. And I was like,
you know what?
Wow.
Here's the thing. Not so much about the open to work badge, but what got people really, really upset was when I said, if you are unemployed, you want to make the first bullet on your experience section a consultancy, right? You want to portray yourself as someone who is not unemployed. You are continually working and open to consulting work in your field.
And some of the best LinkedIn trainers have made the same point on my, LinkedIn live sessions for the reason that LinkedIn penalizes you. The
worst comments I got were people who didn't like that. They said, you're telling people to lie.
Yeah.
Right. A consultant, just someone who loses their job is not a consultant. Right. A consultant is someone who is this and this and this, and you're telling people this is garbage.
Last thing I'm going to say is when any of those people, if they were ever to lose their job, they would probably put the consultant title as well.
Well, I hope they would. I hope they would.
Full circle. But thank you, John. Really appreciate the frankness here in this conversation. And there's one particular question I ask all my guests, and I want to hear from you. When you look back on this illustrious, decades-long career,
Mm-hmm.
I think 50, almost 50 or 50 plus years. Is there one standout, defining moment that supercharged your career and helped you to move closer to your current success?
I saw that question and I had an answer, but another answer just occurred to me, and it's a moment. It's literally a single moment where the first film that I got to produce on my own, 1986, a film that bombed, by the way, little action adventure thriller movie, but we were filming one night. It was a dance hall scene, and the good guy is being chased through this dance club by the bad guy and interrupts the band and runs through the band and knocks the band over and goes off stage. 500 extras, some club in Hollywood, some big cavernous club in Hollywood. And I was actually standing on the bar in the one corner as all this was going on. And I thought, wow, this is something that started inside my head. I woke up one morning with an idea for a movie, and here we are.
Yeah.
2 years later, and we're making it.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow, that's just a powerful feeling to have accomplished that. And I kind of say that because I want people to feel like your ideas matter and you can manifest your ideas. It may not be easy to do. It may not happen fast, but if you set a clear intention and engage with your community to support you, enlist that support, most things are possible.
Yeah. Wow, definitely. Thoughts become things. I got so many goosebumps listening to this story because, it's like, I think of it as the OBE, I call it OBE, outer body experiences. It's like literally you're looking at,
Absolutely.
John, there's a big John, looking at I don't want to say little John, but, looking, and then you're like, dude, what are we doing here?
Right. How did this happen?
How did this happen? And you're talking about an idea in 1984 and you made it into a movie in 1986. What happens to the movie? That's besides the point. And you had so many successes, so it doesn't matter. It rounds off. But here we are talking about it in 2024, 40 years later. How awesome is that? Amazing, amazing. John, so what is the best way? Because you have a lot of stuff going on. You got a podcast, you got a book, you got a TEDx. You've got a very active presence on LinkedIn, as we just talked about. So what is the best way for people to learn more about you and your work?
Well, absolutely. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm the only John Tarnoff on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
So you can find me there. You can also, if you're interested in kind of, getting started on this career process, I want to encourage you to start with this concept of the ikigai, the Japanese notion of life's purpose. And it is interpreted in the West as really having to do with 4 questions. What do you love to do? What are you good at? What does your world need? The classic question is, what does the world need? That's too much. What does your world need? What does your business need? Your industry, your community, and what can you get paid for, right? So at the intersection of those 4 questions is the beginning of your career transition, career reinvention, reimagination. And there is a exercise worksheet that you can download from my site. So it's johntarnoff.com/4 questions, the number 4 questions, no spaces.
I will make sure that link is in the show notes so people can take advantage. So John, this has been such a delight. Thank you so much for your time, your generosity, your candor today. And we wish you continued success with everything you venture into.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for having me on.
Hey there, thank you for taking the time to listen to today's show. If you loved it, please do leave me a review on Apple Podcasts. I search high and low to bring you the very best guests, and I'm so proud to bring you their stories and game-changing career lessons. The best compliment that you could ever give me is taking a screenshot of today's episode and sharing it with your LinkedIn network and tagging me at Sonal Bahl, Sonalbhahl. All right. I look forward to spending time together on the next episode of the How I Got Hired podcast. Take care of yourself and bye for now.